So my name's Denise, and my refutation is in regards to Emmanuel's speech, which was that his claim was that nuclear energy is far safer than traditional power sources. His first secondary claim was that nuclear power is a cause of less deaths than other traditional sources. His second claim was that nuclear power damages the environment far less than traditional energy. And his last point was that nuclear energy is a far more responsible form of energy. In his first claim, he cites the death toll numbers of 3 major accidents by an organization called the World Nuclear Association. This organization promotes nuclear power and supports the many companies that use this energy in their industries. Because this group advocates the use of nuclear power, there is potential bias in the facts replicated onto their website. Another defect found in Emmanuel's speech was that he said that the 3 Mile Island reactor was in New York when it was in Pennsylvania. The failure of the organization to properly identify where the reactor is undermines the credibility of the World Nuclear Association itself. As you can see, the credibility of the World Nuclear Association's information is undermined. In Emmanuel's second claim, he talks about how nuclear power damages the environment far less than traditional energy. The evidence provided does not prove the supporting claim that nuclear power damages the environment far less than traditional energy. The example that I found that proved this was that the comparison that you get more radiation from eating a single banana than from living within 50 miles of a nuclear plant does not really prove the radiation levels at nuclear power plants or the waste being disposed of. The radiation dosage chart where he found this information on only listed the unit of harm that it has on a person's body. His banana comparison did not really show any relevance to his claim that nuclear power damages the environment far less than traditional energy. Therefore, there was a lack of evidence in supporting his main claim. In Emmanuel's third claim, he talked about how nuclear energy is a far more responsible form of energy. In his argument, he described the different ways that make nuclear energy safe and more responsible than other forms of energy. Aside from his facts, he makes a complete assertion that there won't be a leakage issues if nuclear wastes are dumped down mines. He provides no citation and evidence of this point, therefore purely making it his own statement. Over the past 20 years, argumentation has risen as to whether or not the assertion he made is even safe or not. Because this issue is still an ongoing argument, his assertion acts as a flaw in his reasoning process of his own argument. In his speech, Emmanuel claims that nuclear waste is either recycled, safely disposed of, or stored until it can be recycled or disposed of. According to the Nuclear Information and Resource Center, radioactive releases from a nuclear power reactor routine operation often are not fully detected or reported. Not only this, but the government also allows radioactive water to be released to the environment containing permissible levels of contamination. Permissible in this case does not necessarily mean safe, so basically that is still harming people and the environment because there is still leakage that is being contaminated in the water. As a result, nuclear energy is not a far more responsible form of energy as it is not always properly inspected and contamination still occurs, causing harm. As you can see, much of Emmanuel's evidence and support he provides in his secondary claims are irrefutable. Thank you for your time.
All right, Denise, you identify the advocate's claim and you preview the secondary issues pretty clearly. When you get to the first point, you're labeling it fine. You're suggesting bias in the source that he presents at the beginning, and I think that that would be useful to you later on if he continues to use that source, especially if that source is providing opinion evidence, in which case then the bias would have some effect on whether or not we believed it. It's a little harder when the question about bias concerns factual data. If the number of deaths at nuclear power plants is not accurate, it would be easy for you, since it's claimed as a piece of factual data, to dispute. I don't think there's much challenge on that. The argument that they misidentified the location of the plant, that does seem to suggest that somebody screwed up. At least they weren't being very careful. I don't know whether it's the source he's quoting or whether he just wrote it down incorrectly. But still, that attack only works if he's using that evidence later on, because otherwise we're just dealing with factual data. It's a question of sourcing on that. On the second point concerning damage, you have kind of a counterexample that you're challenging with. At least that's what I thought you were going to be doing. But basically, you just say, the banana comparison is not a valid one. And your explanation as to why it's not valid doesn't really clarify anything. It just talks about what the exposure level would be. Your argument here should be some of the stuff that you're presenting later on. For instance, that there are inadvertent exposures, that we don't always know that those exposures exist, and of course those exposures are much higher than the normal level of exposure, and that's what we have to be worried about. And then you could maybe go to the cases where there was extreme exposure, like on that first point in the examples of Chernobyl or Fukushima. I was trying to remember which letter it started with. Fukushima, and look at some of those illustrations. On the argument about leakage in the mines, I think that you have the right idea here, that there's controversy on this, but your argument doesn't have much weight behind it because you don't provide any reason or proof that this controversy is something that we should worry about. You say it's being hotly debated for the last 20 years, and I'm waiting for the information that says that it's dangerous to do, that it can't contain it, that we don't know how long the half-life is going to be able to be containable there, that inevitably it's going to get into the watershed, or any of those other kinds of claims that people are talking about, and I don't get any of that, so it feels like kind of a half of an argument. And then, like I said, you did have some information about routine releases where the activity is not tracked very well. I think that might have worked better with the earlier argument. You say permissible doesn't equal safe, but I had no reason to believe that it doesn't equal safe. You don't give me any data that suggests that it's problematic, that anybody has been harmed by this, so I'm not exactly sure why permissible doesn't constitute safe. I thought you did a nice job speaking to the audience, and you have pretty good vocal delivery there. All right, thank you.